Video 9.5, Punctuating Dialogue. Dialogue is the words the characters in a novel say. The words that identify the speaker, like he said or she said, are called a dialogue tag. Follow the rules on the next slides for punctuating dialogue and direct quotations. Begin a new paragraph every time the speaker changes. Place quotation marks at the beginning and end of a speaker's exact words. For example, Nori, it's time for you to learn some origami, Mrs. Muro suggested. When a dialogue tag interrupts a quoted sentence, begin the second part of the quotation with a lowercase letter. For example, maybe, Nori asked, you can teach me how to make a paper crane. So in this case, you is going to be lowercase because it's a continuation of her quotation, and the dialogue tag Nori asked is interrupting it. If the second part of a divided quotation is a complete sentence, it should begin with a capital letter. For example, do your homework, Nori's mother said. Grandmother might teach you when you're through. So in this case, it's actually like two separate quotations, and so we're going to start with a capital letter. When a direct quotation comes at the beginning of a sentence, use a comma, question mark, or exclamation point, but not a period, to separate it from the dialogue tag that follows. For example, of course I will, Mrs. Muro answered. So this is the quotation at the beginning of the sentence. We're using a comma after will. Commas and periods always go inside the closing quotation marks. For example, while you wash the dishes, I'll get my papers, Grandma said. Notice the comma is inside the quotation. When the speaker's words are a question or an exclamation, place the question mark or exclamation point inside the closing quotation marks. For example, do you remember how you cried when the paper cranes got wet? Notice the question mark is inside the quotation. Yes, laughed Nori, remembering, and notice the exclamation point is inside the quotation. When the quotation itself isn't a question or exclamation, place the question mark or exclamation point outside the closing quotation marks. Here's an example. Who said, I have but one life to give for my country? So the sentence is a question, but the quotation isn't. So the question mark goes after the quotation marks. Please stop saying, it's all your fault. So in this case, the exclamation is the sentence, not the quotation. So the exclamation mark goes outside the quotation. When the quotation is a question, use a question mark inside the closing quotation mark. Place a period after the dialogue that follows. For example, didn't you think they were beautiful? She asked. So in this case, the quotation is a question. The question mark goes inside. Let's take a practice test, punctuating dialogue. Number 1. Last night I read an article about a girl who's the kicker on her high school football team, Tina told Lou. So in this case, we're going to put quotation marks around the quote, starting with before last, and we're going to put a comma after team and a quotation mark after the comma, and then Tina told Lou. Number 2, really, he exclaimed. I don't believe you. In this case, we're putting the quotations around really and keeping the exclamation mark inside the quotation since it's an exclamation. And the same for the next part of the quotation before the word I and then after the exclamation mark. Number 3, really, Tina insisted. Her name is Anna Lakovitch, and she goes to a private high school. In this case, we're putting quotations around the word really and leaving the comma inside the quotation. and then putting the quotation marks around the last part of the quotation, starting with before her and ending after school. 4. Humph, Lou snorted. I can't believe they'd let girls play on a school varsity team. In this case, we're putting quotation marks around the humph and keeping the exclamation mark inside the quotation marks. And then we're putting a quotation mark before the word I and after the period at the end. That's it for punctuating dialogue. Good luck practicing on your own.